Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant and watched the 3 massive alien warships appear on the screen. They were huge, covered in shining metal and glowing lights. His ship looked like junk next to them. That was exactly what he wanted. Commander Lisa Hayes touched her control panel and shook her head. The aliens had been sending messages for an hour, all of them insults. They called the Defiant a piece of garbage. They said humans were stupid for bringing such an old ship to the trade meeting. They laughed and made jokes about Earth being too poor to build real starships. Lieutenant Danny Cross listened to the alien channels and reported what he heard. The Krithal commander was calling them scavengers again. He said the Defiant looked like someone had built it from trash found floating in space. The other aliens were laughing too. The tall crystal beings called the Vexnar actually pointed at the human ship and made fun of it where everyone could see. Jake smiled a little. Good. Let them laugh. Let them think we are weak and stupid. That was the whole plan. He looked at the timer on his screen. 40 minutes until the big meeting started. Navigation Officer Kelly Price worked at her station, keeping the ship steady near the space station. She tried not to look at the alien ships, but it was hard. They were so big and new. The Defiant had old hull plates that did not match. Some of the lights flickered. Paint was peeling off in places. Anyone who looked at it would think humans could barely fly through space at all. Down on the station, Lieutenant Commander Peter Grant walked with his security team through the main area where all the aliens were gathering. Dozens of different species filled the halls. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4. Some floated. Some were made of crystal or gas or things Peter had never seen before. All of them stared at the humans and whispered to each other. The whispers came through their translation devices, and Peter heard every word. Primitive, weak, pathetic, poor. A group of Vexnar walked past, and one of them actually laughed out loud when he looked at Peter's uniform. It was a clear, ringing sound like breaking glass. Peter felt his hands form into fists, but he forced himself to relax. Not yet. Not today. Back on the bridge, Jake received a message from Admiral Victoria Stone. She was back on Earth, probably sitting in her office and worrying. The message was short and clear. Watch, listen, talk if you can, but do not show them what the Defiant really is unless you have no other choice. Jake understood. Earth needed this meeting to go well. Humans had only been traveling between stars for 10 years. Every other species here had been doing it for hundreds or thousands of years. They had better weapons, better shields, better everything, or so they thought. The Krithal Empire was the worst of them all. Their commander, a huge reptile creature named Vorkesh, had already claimed that 12 star systems belonged to his empire now. 3 of those systems were right next to human space. 3 of them had human colonies with families and farms and schools. 30,000 people lived there. Vorkesh did not care. He said those people would become slaves or die. He said it like he was talking about the weather. Lisa pulled up information on her screens and showed it to Jake. The Krithal flagship was called the World Breaker. It had plasma cannons that could melt a city. It had missiles that could crack a planet. It was 3 times bigger than the Defiant and had a crew of over 1,000 warriors. Each warrior was 7 feet tall with claws and teeth and scales that could stop bullets. Danny listened to more transmissions and reported them quietly. The aliens were making bets. They were betting on how fast the Defiant would break down and need repairs. They were betting on whether humans would even dare to argue about the star systems. They were betting on how long it would take before Earth gave up and went home. Kelly checked her instruments and tried to stay calm. She was young, only 25, and this was her first big mission. She had trained for years to be here, but nothing prepared her for being surrounded by aliens who thought humans were jokes. She looked at Captain Morrison and wondered how he could stay so calm. Jake saw her looking and gave her a small nod. He knew how she felt. He had felt the same way when he first left Earth. The galaxy was huge and old and full of species that had been building empires when humans still lived in caves. But Jake had learned something important over the years. Being underestimated was a weapon if you knew how to use it. The meeting time arrived, and Ambassador Catherine Wells took her seat at the big conference table. She was surrounded by aliens of every type. Vorkesh sat across from her, his yellow eyes staring at her like she was food. Other species sat around the circular table, all of them more powerful than Earth, all of them looking down on the humans. Catherine was 50 years old and had been a diplomat for 30 of those years. She had negotiated with presidents and kings and generals. But this was different. These aliens did not see her as an equal. They saw her as a child playing at adult games. She could feel it in every look, every gesture, every word. The meeting began and immediately turned into a fight. Vorkesh demanded the 12 systems. The Jakar, who looked like giant insects, wanted mining rights on human worlds. The ethereals, beings made of glowing gas, claimed that humans were too primitive to control any systems at all. They should all be put under protection of older, wiser species. Protection meant control. Control meant slavery with a nice name, Catherine argued back. She presented evidence that humans had been in those systems first. She showed maps and documents and proof. The aliens barely looked at them. Vorkesh actually yawned, showing all his sharp teeth. Then Vorkesh stood up. His huge body cast a shadow over the table. He slammed his clawed fist down and the whole table shook. He said humans had no right to those systems because humans were weak. He said Earth could not defend those colonies if someone decided to take them. He said it was very simple. The strong take what they want. The weak lose everything. The room went quiet. Every alien there was watching to see what Catherine would do. Would she back down? Would she beg? Would she offer them something valuable to make them go away? That is what they expected. That is what weak species always did. Catherine looked at Vorkesh. Then she looked around at all the other aliens. She thought about the families on those colony worlds. She thought about the children playing in parks under alien suns. She thought about Earth and how hard humans had worked to reach the stars. She thought about every insult, every laugh, every dismissive gesture she had endured. Then she smiled. Catherine looked directly at Vorkesh and spoke in a clear, steady voice. She said that if he wanted to test Earth's strength, they could arrange a demonstration, a simple military exercise. His best ship against the Defiant. Winner takes the disputed systems. Loser withdraws all claims and leaves. The conference room exploded with noise. Aliens clicked and hissed and hummed and made sounds Catherine had never heard before. The translation devices struggled to keep up, but the meaning was clear. They were excited. This would be entertainment. They would finally get to see the primitive humans destroyed, and then they could divide up Earth's colonies among themselves. Vorkesh's mouth split into a horrible grin. His teeth were as long as Catherine's fingers. He agreed immediately. He said it would be his pleasure to teach humans their place in the galaxy. He said his crew had been bored lately and needed some target practice. He said he would try to leave enough of the Defiant intact so Earth could recover the bodies. The other aliens laughed. Even the ones who were supposed to be friendly to Earth could not hide their amusement. The Jakar clicked their mandibles together in what passed for laughter among their kind. The ethereals pulsed with colors that their translators said meant joy and anticipation. Catherine stood up and formally accepted the challenge. She stated the terms clearly so everyone would hear and remember. One ship against one ship, no interference from other vessels. The battle would take place at coordinates she would provide, in empty space where no one could claim the fight was unfair. If Vorkesh won, Earth would withdraw from the 12 systems and pay reparations for wasting his time. If the Defiant won, the Krathal Empire would leave human space forever and acknowledge Earth's territorial rights. Vorkesh agreed to everything. Why would he not? He had already won in his mind. The Worldbreaker was a ship of legend. It had destroyed entire fleets. It had bombarded planets until they surrendered. The Defiant was a joke, a rusty old cargo hauler that humans had painted with military colors and pretended was a warship. Catherine activated her communicator and called Captain Morrison. She told him what she had done. There was a pause on the other end, and for a moment she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Then Jake's voice came through, calm and confident. He said they were ready. He said to tell Vorkesh they would meet him in 2 hours at the neutral coordinates. The conference broke up as everyone rushed to their ships. No one wanted to miss this. It would be the entertainment of the year, watching the primitive humans get obliterated. Some aliens were already recording messages to send home, describing the foolish humans who challenged a Krathal flagship with a garbage scow. On the Defiant, Jake gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. Lisa, Danny, Kelly, and Peter all stood around the table and looked at the holographic display of the Worldbreaker. It was huge and covered with weapons. The statistics were terrifying. It had enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Jake looked at each of them in turn. He asked if they were ready. He reminded them that they had trained for this moment for 3 years. Everything they had done, every drill, every practice session had been leading to this. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could do when they were pushed too far. Lisa checked her systems and reported that everything was ready. The disguise protocols were holding. The power core was stable. The weapon systems were charged and waiting. All they needed was the order to drop the act and show the galaxy what the Defiant really was. Kelly plotted the course to the battle coordinates. Her hands were steady now. The nervousness was gone, replaced by determination. She had seen the way the aliens looked at her people. She had heard the insults. She wanted to show them all how wrong they were. Danny confirmed that all communications were secure. The aliens would not be able to intercept any human transmissions during the fight. He had also prepared a special broadcast that would go out to every ship after the battle. It was a message from Earth to the galaxy, and Jake had written every word himself. Peter reported that his security teams were ready. They had a special job to do during the battle, something the aliens would never expect. He said his people were eager to show the Krathal what human Marines could do in close combat. The Defiant undocked from the station and began moving toward the battle coordinates. Behind it came a parade of alien ships, all of them eager to watch the show. There were observers from 50 different species, all crowding into the safe zone to get the best view. The Worldbreaker arrived first and took up a position in the center of the designated battle area. It was enormous, a moving fortress covered in armor and bristling with weapon ports. Its shields glowed with power. Its engines burned like small suns. Vorkesh sent a message on all frequencies, inviting the humans to come and die with honor. The Defiant approached slowly, looking small and pathetic next to the Krathal flagship. The observer ships fell silent as they watched the two vessels face each other. This was it, the moment when humanity would learn its place. Inside the Defiant, Jake sat in the captain's chair and watched the tactical display. Vorkesh was positioning his ship exactly where Jake wanted it. The Krathal commander was so confident that he was not even trying to be strategic. He was just showing off, demonstrating his ship's power to the audience. Jake activated the shipwide intercom and spoke to his crew. He told them that what they did in the next few minutes would change everything. Earth would never be dismissed again. Humans would never be laughed at again. The galaxy would learn that underestimating humanity was the worst mistake anyone could make. Lisa's hands moved over her console, entering codes that only she and Jake knew. Deep inside the Defiant, in spaces the aliens thought were just cargo holds, systems began to wake up. Lights turned from red to green. Weapons that had been hidden for years started charging. The ship's true power core, hidden behind the weak one the aliens could detect, began to spin up. Kelly plotted an attack pattern that would have been impossible for the ship the aliens thought they were facing. Danny prepared to jam every sensor in the area the moment the fighting started. Peter gave the final check to his Marines, who were sealed in their armored suits and ready to launch. Vorkesh sent one final message. He said he would give the humans a chance to surrender now and save themselves the pain of dying in space. He said there was no shame in admitting they were outmatched. He said Earth could still keep some of its colonies if they begged properly. Jake did not bother to respond with words. Instead, he gave Lisa a single nod. She entered the final command sequence and hit execute. The transformation began. The Defiant's outer hull plates started to move, separating and folding back like the petals of a metal flower. The disguise that had fooled the entire galaxy was finally coming off, and beneath it the monster was waking up. The observer ships detected the change immediately. Their sensors went crazy as the Defiant's readings suddenly multiplied. What had registered as a weak cargo ship was now showing power signatures that rivaled the Worldbreaker. The mismatched hull plates that everyone had mocked were falling away, revealing sleek black armor underneath. One of the Vexnar observers transmitted in shock. He asked what the humans were doing. He said their ship was transforming. He said the readings made no sense. The power output was impossible for a vessel that size. The energy signature was all wrong. This could not be the same ship, but it was. The outer shell had been nothing but a disguise. Old hull plates and fake damage carefully arranged to make the Defiant look like a piece of junk. Underneath was the real ship, built in secret over 7 years by every nation on Earth working together. It was humanity's answer to being laughed at, dismissed and threatened. The true Defiant emerged in all its deadly beauty. The black armor gleamed under the starlight. Cooling channels etched into the hull began to glow blue as the main reactor came to full power. Weapon ports opened along the sides, revealing railguns, missile launchers, and systems the aliens had never seen before. The ship that had looked clumsy and slow now moved with perfect grace, every motion precise and controlled. Vorkesh stared at his tactical display and could not believe what he was seeing. He demanded to know what kind of trick this was. He said humans did not have this kind of technology. Earth had barely achieved faster than light travel 10 years ago. They should not be able to build anything like this. It was not possible. Jake Morrison's voice came over the open channel, calm and cold. He said this was not a trick. This was humanity. He said Vorkesh wanted to see Earth's strength. Now he would get his wish. He said the Krathal commander should prepare himself because the real fight was about to begin. Vorkesh roared in anger and ordered his weapons officers to fire everything. The Worldbreaker's plasma cannons lit up space with streams of superheated energy. Missiles launched from dozens of tubes streaking toward the Defiant in swarms. It was enough firepower to destroy a city, all focused on one target. Kelly Price sent the Defiant into a rolling dive that should have been impossible for a ship that size. The plasma bolts passed through empty space where the Defiant had been a moment before. The missiles tried to track but could not keep up with the sudden change in direction. Half of them collided with each other. The rest flew past and exploded harmlessly in the distance. The observer ships fell completely silent. No one was laughing now. No one was making bets. They were all watching with growing fear as the human ship danced through a storm of weapons fire like it was nothing. Lisa Hayes activated the Defiant's true shields. They had been running on minimal power before, just enough to maintain the disguise. Now they blazed to full strength, creating a blue barrier of energy that could absorb incredible punishment. When the next wave of plasma bolts hit, the shields rippled but held easily. Jake gave the order to return fire. Lisa targeted the Worldbreaker's shield generators and fired the railguns. The weapons used magnetic fields to accelerate solid metal slugs to enormous speeds. The rounds hit the Krathal shields and punched straight through them like they were made of paper. The slugs tore into the armor beneath, creating massive holes in the Worldbreaker's hull. Vorkesh's ship shuddered from the impacts. Alarms blared throughout the Krathal vessel. His crew shouted reports of damage, casualties, hull breaches. The shield generators were offline. The armor was compromised in 6 locations. They were losing atmosphere from 3 decks, and the human ship had barely started fighting. The Jakar observer transmitted a panicked message asking how this was possible. Human weapons technology was supposed to be primitive. Their railguns should not be that powerful. Their targeting systems should not be that accurate. Where did they get this technology? How long had they been hiding it? Catherine Wells stood on the observation deck of the space station with the other diplomats. She watched the battle and allowed herself a small smile. She had known about the Defiant's true nature for 6 months. She had kept the secret while aliens insulted her to her face. She had endured their mockery and their threats. Now they were seeing the truth, and the fear in their eyes was satisfying. Back in the battle, Kelly brought the Defiant around for another attack run. The ship responded to her controls like it was reading her mind. Every human officer on the bridge was working in perfect coordination. Years of training coming together in this moment. Danny Cross jammed the Worldbreaker's communications and sensors. Vorkesh was effectively blind now, unable to target properly and unable to call for help. Not that help would come. The observer ships were staying well back, suddenly very interested in remaining neutral. Lisa launched the next weapon system. Missiles shot from hidden bays along the Defiant's flanks, but these were not ordinary missiles. Each one carried a small nuclear warhead, shaped and focused to punch through armor rather than create a big explosion. They were precision weapons designed to kill ships without destroying everything around them. The missiles struck the Worldbreaker in rapid sequence. Each explosion opened the way for the next, creating a cascading effect that tore through the alien ship's internal structure. The Krathal flagship, the terror of a dozen systems, the ship that had never been defeated, was being systematically taken apart by a vessel everyone had laughed at an hour ago. Jake watched the tactical display and knew the moment had come for the final demonstration. He activated the shipwide comm and gave Peter Grant the order. Deploy the boarding teams. Show them what human Marines can do. Armored pods launched from the Defiant's sides and crossed the space to the crippled world breaker in seconds. They clamped onto the hull and cut through the weakened armor. Inside each pod were 6 Marines in advanced combat armor, carrying weapons that combined human ingenuity with technology the aliens thought humans did not have. Sergeant Kyle Brooks led the first team through the breach. The Krathal warriors waiting for them were 7 feet tall, covered in scales, armed with energy weapons and natural claws that could tear through steel. They were fierce and proud and had never lost a boarding action in their lives. They lasted 40 seconds against the human Marines. The armor the humans wore was not just protection. It enhanced their strength, their speed, their reflexes. It had sensors that could see in the dark, through smoke, through walls. The weapons fired smart ammunition that could track targets and adjust trajectory in flight. The Marines moved like a single organism, covering each other, communicating through neural links, fighting with a coordination the Krathal had never seen. Kyle's team cleared the first corridor and moved deeper into the ship. Behind them came more teams, spreading through the world breaker like a virus. The Krathal fought back with everything they had, but they were designed for straightforward combat, strength against strength. The humans fought with strategy, technology, and the desperation of a species that had been underestimated for too long. On the Defiant's bridge, Lisa monitored the boarding action while also tracking the other observer ships. Several of them were powering up weapons. They were thinking about intervening, about stopping this before the humans proved too much of what they could do. Jake saw it too. He made a decision that would change everything. He told Lisa to activate the Mjolnir system. It was humanity's newest weapon, something they had never tested in actual combat. It was also the most powerful thing humans had ever built. Kelly's eyes went wide when she heard the order. She asked if he was sure. The Mjolnir had only been tested twice, both times in remote areas far from any observers. They did not know if it would work properly. They did not know if the Defiant could even handle the power drain. Jake said he was sure. The galaxy needed to see what Earth could do. They needed to understand that attacking humanity would be the worst mistake they could ever make. He ordered Kelly to target the lifeless moon orbiting the nearby planet. Fire when ready. The Defiant rotated smoothly and its top hull opened. A massive weapon emerged, larger than anything else on the ship. It was a magnetic accelerator, a railgun built on a scale that pushed the limits of physics. The humans called it Mjolnir. After the hammer of an ancient god, it could throw a small projectile at almost the speed of light. Lisa locked onto the moon and fired. The weapon made no sound in the vacuum of space, but every ship's sensors detected the enormous energy discharge. A 10-kilogram metal slug accelerated down the length of the Defiant and shot toward the moon at 90% of light speed. When it hit, the explosion was visible across the entire system. The impact released as much energy as a large nuclear weapon. A crater 20 kilometers wide appeared on the moon's surface. Debris fountained into space. Shockwaves rippled through the moon's crust, creating smaller craters all around the impact point. Every observer ship detected the strike. Their computers calculated the energy involved and came back with numbers that should have been impossible. That kind of kinetic energy from such a small projectile meant velocities that required enormous amounts of power. The Defiant had just demonstrated a weapon that could kill planets. The alien ships that had been powering up weapons suddenly shut them down. They transmitted apologies for the misunderstanding. Jake opened a channel to the world breaker on all frequencies so everyone could hear. He spoke directly to Vorkesh. He said the demonstration was over. The Kurthal commander could order his crew to stand down and surrender, or the next shot from the Mjolnir would go through his bridge. The choice was his, and he had 10 seconds to decide. Inside the crippled world breaker, Vorkesh sat in his command chair and looked at the chaos around him. Half his crew was dead or wounded. His ship was torn apart from the inside and outside. Human Marines were moving through his corridors, defeating his best warriors with ease. His shields were gone, his weapons mostly destroyed. And the human ship had just demonstrated a weapon that could crack his vessel in half with a single shot. He had never surrendered in his life. The Kurthal did not surrender. They fought to the death or won completely. There was no middle ground. But as he looked at the tactical display showing the Defiant hovering nearby, undamaged and ready to fire again, Vorkesh understood something. This was not a battle anymore. This was an execution waiting to happen. He transmitted his surrender on all channels. His voice was quiet, stripped of the arrogance and pride he had shown before. He ordered his crew to stand down. He told the human Marines they could take control of the ship. He acknowledged that the Krathal Empire had been defeated by Earth in fair combat. The fighting stopped immediately. The human Marines secured the Krathal warriors and began helping with medical treatment for the wounded. Kyle Brooks found Vorkesh on the bridge and stood before the massive reptilian commander. Kyle was less than half Vorkesh's size, but in his armor, he looked like something from a nightmare. His weapons were still powered and ready. His visor hid his face, making him seem like a machine rather than a man. Vorkesh looked at the human Marine and asked a question. He wanted to know how long Earth had been hiding this technology. He wanted to know how they had developed weapons that surpassed most of the galaxy's arsenals. He wanted to know how a species that was barely spacefaring had built a ship like the Defiant. Kyle did not answer. That information was classified. Instead, he told Vorkesh that the commander would be treated with respect as a defeated enemy. His crew would receive medical care. His ship would be returned to him once repairs were made. But he and his empire would leave human space forever and never threaten Earth again. Those were the terms, non-negotiable. On the observation deck of the space station, the alien diplomats stood in stunned silence. Catherine Wells walked among them, watching their faces. The Vexnar who had laughed at her earlier now avoided her eyes. The Jakar were clicking nervously, their confidence completely gone. The ethereals pulsed with colors that indicated fear and confusion. One of the senior diplomats, a Vexnar named Kravex, approached Catherine carefully. He asked if they could speak privately. Catherine agreed, and they moved to a side room away from the others. Kravex wanted to know how many ships like the Defiant Earth possessed. It was a logical question. If humans had one such vessel, they might have more. Catherine smiled and said that information was classified, but she could tell him that the Defiant was their oldest prototype. Earth had learned quite a bit since building it. She let the words hang in the air. Let Kravex imagine what that might mean. Newer ships, better weapons, more surprises waiting behind Earth's borders. It was a bluff, of course. The Defiant was currently Earth's only ship with such advanced systems. But the aliens did not need to know that. Let them think humanity had a fleet of monsters hiding in their home system. Let them imagine what Earth might do if truly threatened. Fear would keep them careful. Fear would keep them respectful. The conference reconvened 3 hours later. The atmosphere had changed completely. The aliens who had mocked humanity now watched the human delegation with wary eyes. No one made jokes. No one laughed. They listened carefully when Catherine spoke and did not interrupt. The territorial dispute was resolved quickly. Earth kept all its existing colonies. The Krathal Empire formally withdrew all claims to the disputed systems. As compensation for the unprovoked threat, the Empire also ceded 3 additional systems to human control. The other alien species, seeing which way things were going, began offering trade deals and technology exchanges. Catherine negotiated from a position of strength now. She secured mining rights, established trade routes, and obtained a permanent seat for Earth on the Galactic Trade Council. Every concession she asked for was granted. The species that had planned to divide up human space were now competing to become Earth's allies. The Jakar offered to share their manufacturing technology. The ethereals wanted to establish an embassy on Earth. Even the Vexnar, who had been so dismissive before, requested permission to send students to human universities. They wanted to learn how Earth had accomplished so much so quickly. Jake Morrison watched the diplomatic proceedings from the Defiance Bridge. The ship was still in its true form, black armor gleaming, weapons visible. He had decided to leave the disguise off for a while. Let the galaxy see what they were really dealing with. Let them remember what happened when they underestimated humanity. Lisa worked on her systems, already planning upgrades and improvements. The Defiant had performed perfectly, but there was always room to be better. She was thinking about more powerful shields, faster weapons, better targeting. If the galaxy knew about one monster, Earth needed to be building the next one. Danny compiled all the communication intercepts from the battle. The chatter among the observer species had been fascinating. They had gone from mockery to shock to fear in the span of minutes. Some of them were already sending urgent messages home, warning their governments that Earth was more dangerous than anyone had realized. Kelly plotted a course back to Earth. The mission was complete. They had done what they came to do. Humanity would not be dismissed anymore. They had proven themselves in the only language the galaxy truly understood: force. Peter Grant returned from the World Breaker with his Marines. They had suffered no casualties. A few had minor injuries from close combat with the Krathal, but nothing serious. They had completed their mission perfectly, demonstrating that humans could fight and win even against physically superior opponents. Before leaving the system, Jake received a personal communication from Vorkesh. The Krathal commander wanted to speak one final time. Jake accepted the call and listened to what the defeated warrior had to say. Vorkesh told him that he had sent a full report to the Krathal Imperium. He had described the battle in detail, holding nothing back. He had told them about the Defiant's true capabilities, about the weapons, about the Marines. He had recommended that the Imperium open proper diplomatic relations with Earth immediately. Jake asked why. Why help the species that had just humiliated him? Vorkesh's answer was simple. He said the Krathal respected strength above all else. Humans had proven they were strong. More than that, they had fought with honor. They had offered surrender terms. They had treated prisoners well. They had won but not slaughtered needlessly. That earned respect among his people. The transmission ended and Jake sat back in his chair. He thought about the long journey that had brought them here. 7 years of secret development, years of enduring insults and mockery. All the nations of Earth working together for the first time in history, united by the simple fact that the galaxy looked down on them. They had taken every insult, every dismissive gesture, every threat, and used it as motivation. While the aliens were laughing, human scientists were solving problems thought impossible. Human engineers were building weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. Human strategists were planning for the day when Earth would show the galaxy what humans could really do. That day had come. And humanity had not disappointed. The Defiant's engines powered up and the ship began its journey home. Behind it, the space station buzzed with new negotiations, new alliances, new respect for the species everyone had underestimated. The World Breaker limped toward a Krathal repair facility, carrying a crew that would never forget the day they learned humans were not prey. And across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, messages were being sent and received. Earth had arrived. Earth was strong. Earth was not to be trifled with. The laughing had stopped. The mockery had ended. A new era had begun, one where humanity stood as equals among the stars, or perhaps some whispered fearfully as something more than equals. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. The Defiant traveled through the shipping lanes at normal speed, making no effort to hide anymore. Other ships gave it a wide berth. Word had spread fast. Everyone in this part of the galaxy now knew what the old, rusty-looking human ship really was. Jake spent much of the journey writing his report for Admiral Victoria Stone. He described every detail of the battle, every weapon system used, every reaction from the observers. He included recommendations for future deployments and suggestions for how Earth should handle its new status in the galactic community. Lisa worked with the engineering team to analyze the ship's performance. The Defiant had operated at 97% efficiency during the battle, which was excellent but not perfect. She found small issues with heat distribution in the railguns and minor power fluctuations in the shield generators. Nothing critical, but things that could be improved for next time. Because there would be a next time. Earth had shown its hand now. The galaxy knew humans had advanced technology and powerful weapons. Some species would respect that and seek friendship. Others would see it as a threat and start building their own weapons to counter Earth's advantage. The arms race had begun. Danny compiled data on all the alien species that had observed the battle. He created profiles on each one, noting which seemed friendly, which seemed frightened, and which seemed angry about humanity's demonstration. This information would be valuable for future diplomatic efforts and military planning. Kelly had time to reflect on what they had accomplished. She was still young, still learning, but she had been part of something historic. She had helped pilot the ship that changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. Her children would read about this in history books someday. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. Peter debriefed his Marines and wrote commendations for several of them, who had performed exceptionally well during the boarding action. The close combat with the Krathal had been intense and his people had handled it perfectly. He was already thinking about new training programs based on what they had learned. When Earth came into view, Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had done it. They had completed the mission and achieved everything they set out to do. No one had died. The ship was intact, and humanity's position in the galaxy had changed forever. The Defiant entered Earth's orbit and received a hero's welcome. Every ship in the system sounded their horns in salute. Messages flooded in from governments around the world, all congratulating the crew. The media was going crazy with the story, broadcasting footage of the battle that had been recorded by observer ships and leaked to human news networks. Admiral Victoria Stone met them at the orbital station personally. She shook hands with every crew member and thanked them for their service. When she reached Jake, she pulled him aside and spoke quietly. She told him that everything had changed. The United Nations was in emergency session. Every nation wanted to increase military spending. Everyone wanted their own version of the Defiant. Jake asked if that was a good thing. Victoria thought for a moment before answering. She said it was necessary. Earth could not rely on one ship and one crew forever. They needed a real fleet, real defenses, real power to back up the reputation they had just earned. But they also needed to be careful. Power could corrupt. Strength could lead to arrogance. Humans needed to remember why they built the Defiant in the first place. To protect themselves, not to conquer others. The crew was given a month of leave before their next assignment. Jake went home to see his family for the first time in 6 months. His wife had watched the battle on the news and nearly had a heart attack when she saw how close the Defiant had come to being destroyed in those first few minutes. His children thought he was a superhero now, which was embarrassing but also wonderful. Lisa visited the research facility where the Defiant had been designed. She met with the scientists and engineers who had spent years developing the technology. They wanted to know everything about how their systems had performed in real combat. She spent days answering questions and providing data that would help them design the next generation of ships. Danny gave lectures at the Military Intelligence Academy, teaching future officers about electronic warfare and the importance of information control during combat. He had become something of a celebrity in intelligence circles. The man who had blinded a Krathal flagship and jammed an entire fleet of observers. Kelly was promoted and offered a position as chief navigator on one of the new ships being built. The offer came with a significant pay increase and the chance to help train the next generation of pilots. She accepted immediately, excited to be part of Earth's growing space fleet. Peter was put in charge of training all Marine units for space combat. His success against the Krathal had proven that humans could compete with physically superior aliens through superior tactics and technology. He established a new academy dedicated to teaching boarding operations and close-quarters combat in zero gravity. 3 months after the battle, Ambassador Catherine Wells returned to Earth for the first time in 2 years. She had been busy establishing embassies, negotiating treaties, and managing Earth's new relationships with dozens of alien species. The work was exhausting but rewarding. Everywhere she went now, she was treated with respect. She gave a speech at the United Nations that was broadcast worldwide. She talked about the importance of strength and the responsibility that came with it. She reminded people that the Defiant had been built for defense, not aggression. Earth needed to remain vigilant but also humble. They had proven themselves to the galaxy, but that did not give them the right to become bullies themselves. The speech was well received, though Catherine knew some people did not want to hear it. There were politicians and generals who saw Earth's new military capabilities as a chance for expansion. They wanted to claim more systems, build more weapons, establish human dominance while they had the advantage. Catherine understood the temptation, but she also understood the danger. If Earth became the aggressor, if humans started acting like the species they had just defeated, then they would lose the moral authority that made their victory meaningful. They would become just another empire, conquering and exploiting, and the galaxy would unite against them. 6 months after the battle, the first New Earth warship was completed. It was named the Valiant, and it incorporated everything learned from the Defiant plus new innovations developed in the months since. It was faster, more powerful, and carried a crew of 200 instead of 50. At the launch ceremony, Jake Morrison was offered command of the new vessel. He turned it down. He told Admiral Stone that his place was on the Defiant. That ship had become more than metal and technology to him. It was a symbol of what Earth could accomplish when pushed to its limits. He wanted to keep flying it, Keep showing the galaxy that the old reliable ship was still there, still protecting human interests. The Admiral understood and gave command of the Valiant to a younger officer. But she also told Jake that he could not fly forever. Eventually, he would need to train someone to take his place. The Defiant needed to continue even after he was gone. 1 year after the battle, Jake received a surprising communication. It came from Vorkesh, the Krithal commander he had defeated. The message was brief. Vorkesh wanted Jake to know that the Krithal Imperium had established formal diplomatic relations with Earth. Trade routes had been opened. Cultural exchanges were happening. And Vorkesh himself had been assigned as the Krithal ambassador to Earth. Jake laughed when he heard that. The warrior who had threatened to destroy human colonies was now going to live among humans and represent his people's interests peacefully. It was the strangest outcome he could have imagined, but also somehow fitting. He sent a reply welcoming Vorkesh to Earth and offering to meet for dinner when the ambassador arrived. If they were going to be neighbors in the galaxy, they might as well try to understand each other. The Defiant continued its missions, sometimes with the disguise hull in place, and sometimes without. Jake liked keeping the galaxy guessing. Sometimes they would dock at a station looking like a piece of junk, just to see if anyone would make the mistake of underestimating them again. No one did. The lesson had been learned too well. On Earth, in facilities hidden deep underground and in orbit where spy satellites could not see, work continued on new weapons and ships. Scientists pushed the boundaries of physics, trying to stay ahead of the rest of the galaxy. Engineers built machines that would have seemed impossible a decade ago. Strategists planned for conflicts that might not happen for years or decades, because humanity had learned the most important lesson the galaxy had to teach. Strength was not just about muscles or claws or natural weapons. Strength was about intelligence, determination, and the refusal to accept defeat. It was about taking every insult, every threat, every moment of being underestimated and using it as fuel to become better. Because humanity had learned the most important lesson the galaxy had to teach. Strength was not just about muscles or claws or natural weapons. Strength was about intelligence, determination, and the refusal to accept defeat. It was about taking every insult, every threat, every moment of being underestimated and using it as fuel to become better.